Hello, everybody. My name is Jimmy Smith, and welcome to the YouTube channel Wine with Jimmy. So this is a video which is focusing on wine production for the WSET Diploma, the Level 4. This is going to be on the growing environment, looking at water. This is part 1 of 4. This is available as free content, this video only on YouTube. And then all of the parts 1, 2, 3, 4, are available on my e-learning portal, which is winewithjimmy.com. So you can go along there and sign up, and there's plenty more study materials available on that site. So this is the growing environment. If you do have any questions, comments or concerns, please do get in touch. You can comment on this video down below on YouTube, or you can get in touch via social media that you see at the bottom of every slide, or by directly at the Wine with Jimmy website. So let's start. Oh, and yes, please remember, hit the subscribe button. We have 2 updates every week covering the WSET syllabus. Okay, so without further ado, let's look out at the water part of the growing environment on the Level 4, the all-challenging WSET Diploma. So, of course, the vine needs water to survive, and adequate water availability is vital for healthy vine growth and, of course, grape ripening. And what about the minimums that we need then? Let's have a look at that. So generally, and very generally, the vine needs a minimum of 500 millimeters of rainfall per year in cool climates, remembering that cool climates are below an average of 16.5 degrees Celsius during the growth season. And in warm climates, we're talking around 750 millimeters plus, but it's not always as easy as that. Of course, there are varieties like Garnacha that survive in places like the Rioja Oriental, which used to be called the Rioja Baja, which the rainfall is like 300 to 400 millimeters, and it survives quite well. So it's quite adept to these drought-like conditions. So it's not always as easy as that. What do we need water for? Well, the vine needs it for its turgidity, and that's its kind of solid, its structure, so it doesn't wilt. For photosynthesis, of course, which is powered by sunlight, and that kind of in turn powers the growth and then glucose production for growth and sugar ripening, and of course regulating its temperature as well. Water also acts as a solvent for nutrients in the soil, very importantly, to bring that into the vine. So that's important for its uptake into the vine, and is the medium in which the vine's biochemical and physiological mechanisms take place. Either too little or too much water can have, of course, a negative impact on the vine, and something we will discuss over this presentation. So water vapor, first of all, we're talking about transpiration in this, and there's a diagram in the middle that shows you we have the root system in the soil, and water is absorbed by those roots, and it travels through the plant and then evaporates from the leaf surface. So we're going to talk in depth about that. Water vapor diffuses out of the stomata, and I've got a slide on what the stomata is next. So these are on the underside of the vine's leaves, and they're like little mouths that control a lot of things like oxygen, carbon dioxide, and water flow. So we'll look at that in a second. The loss of water from the cells in a leaf causes water to be pulled upwards. So as the water evaporates from the leaf surface, then water is then pulled up through the trunk, through anything like cordons or stems, and then of course into the leaf. And it goes all to the above ground parts. As it gets warmer, water evaporates from the vine's leaves at a faster rate. As you can think, it's kind of like us when we are maybe exercising and we are sweating more. We're evaporating water from ourselves, and of course we then need to take on more water. That reminds me, maybe I should. Other brands are available, but yes, it's quite similar. So of course it's losing that and it needs to then replace it, and that's through its root systems it will do that. So let's have a look at the role of the stomata. Now, these look like little alien pictures often when we get close to what a stomata looks like. But there you are. There is a vine leaf. And looking closely at that, there you've got one of those stomata mouths that are open. So open stomata, so when it's smiling, that allows the free exchange of water vapor out of the vine. And that's that first arrow just up here. Have I got my pointer here? I have, yes. So this is this one saying water vapor out of the vine. It can also let carbon dioxide and oxygen diffuse in and out of the leaves. Now, quite commonly, of course, carbon dioxide goes in to the leaves and oxygen comes out and water vapor comes out, but there is a flow either way. If the vine has sufficient water, it will keep open its stomata all day. There are hormones within the plant, very, very sophisticated mechanisms, and those hormones will indicate to the stomata that they can remain open. There's plenty of water availability. So that's one positive aspect. If the stomata remains open, it's transpiring. That is very good for sugar production. But what happens, of course, if there is an imbalance of water supply? So stomata and water stress is the next thing. And this is actually the picture here you'll see is a close-up of an underside of a leaf. And you've got the stomata in here that are all closed or partially closed in some of the instances. So yes, the lack of water causes the vine to partially close its little mouths of stomata. This can help conserve water. So it does that when a hormone triggers it to tell it to do so, because there, of course, is an imbalance, a lack of water. So it's for conserving that water to survive, of course. So this in turn would reduce or even stop photosynthesis due to the lack of carbon dioxide entering the leaves, because of course the mouth is closed. As photosynthesis is the way that the plant makes sugars for energy, this causes the vine's growth, of course, therefore to slow or stop and become stunted. And of course, then in turn can also slow down ripening. So that is, of course, a fair big issue. And in real sort of extreme cases, water stress can lead to leaf loss. So it can cause the leaves to severely wilt and, of course, fall off, and could lead to the vine death, certainly in areas where there's quite extreme drought conditions. Certain places like in South Africa during the many droughts they had in the last decade meant that many old vines really did struggle, and many of them ended up perishing as well. Lack of rainfall in the growing season can be an issue in several wine regions, including, of course, places like South Africa, as I just mentioned, Argentina, California, Australia. And of course, a way of combating that is through irrigation, which is a form of water management, if it is possible. Of course, philosophy may come into play here, and the philosophies of the winemaker, where they only will dry bush farm. It is not dry farming. They will not use irrigation because they believe it's against their philosophy. So it may be that the vine will end up, of course, perishing. Some, of course, will have a balance in their philosophy and allow some irrigation if they do see that the vines are, of course, struggling a lot. So let's talk a little bit about the water supply through the seasons. First of all, we have water supply in spring. And a plentiful supply of water in springtime. Remember, this is when you are just post bud burst and really the vegetative shoot growth, the early shoot growth. So this encourages very good growth of lots of leaves and the shoots and tendrils and lateral shoots and so on. And it causes a very large establishment of the leaf, so gaining a big leaf surface, which is very important, of course, for photosynthesis, for the growth of the grapes and the ripening of them. So plenty of water at spring, increased growth at that time. So going into sort of spring and summer now, if water is too easily available in late spring and early summer, the vegetative growth, so the growth of the vine, the shoots and the leaves, is excessively promoted, and it can also prolong into the period of grape ripening, and that really causes an imbalance because the vine has kind of like a switch, really needs a switch where it goes from growing, and then it switches to grape ripening. If the growing is able to continue, so growing more leaf canopy, more shoots, etc., then of course it's not switching to the grape ripening. So that means it can have a detrimental effect on the amount of time available for grape ripening. So that competition for the vine's sugars will delay and compromise ripening. So it's widely considered that mild water stress is beneficial before grape color change, which is Veraison, as it inhibits further shoot growth, but not, of course, over stress. So what about excessive water during this time in spring and summer? So if you have an excessive amount of water where there is too much shoot growth, of course, you'll end up getting quite a large amount of canopy being produced, leaves, creating a nice thick canopy. This can in turn cause lots of shading for the grapes that are growing beneath it. This in turn can do many, many things. So we can have a reduction in the formation of anthocyanins, so the color pigmentation. And you could have a reduction in tannin accumulation. Remember, this is pre-Veraison at that point. And also a reduction in the formation of aroma compounds and precursors. So it really needs to be managed. If you do know that you have excessive water at this time, canopy management and of course pruning techniques will come in quite handy to control this. And next up, of course, as well, this can lead also later on, and this is post-Veraison color change, less tannin polymerization. Remember, tannin's accumulation happens before color change, so it increases, but then it ripens, it develops, or it polymerizes after Veraison. So if it doesn't fully polymerize, that's what will be quite green and astringent and bitter at the end of the day. Also, higher levels of methoxypyrazines. So methoxypyrazines are aroma precursors. So these are found in the grapes. They do not have any taste at that point, but through the art of fermentation, they do end up having quite distinctive characteristics. Things like boxwood, green pepper, asparagus, grass, nettle. So if the ripening is delayed because of the competition with the growth of the vine, then the methoxypyrazines, which normally decrease with successful ripening, wouldn't have decreased as much. So they actually will maintain a higher percentage, which means you might have more green compounds in your final product. Dense canopies also of shoots and leaves have poor ventilation, which can lead to fungal disease, and certainly in sort of rainy or humid places that is true. Okay, so what about water supply post-Veraison, so after color change? So the optimum amount of water by the vine, required by the vine, between Veraison and ripening is a difficult thing to really put into words. It's not really something which is fully understood, but we will make some summaries, some summarizations for this. We think, and many people agree, that severe water stress or plentiful water, so opposite ends of the spectrum, different swings of the pendulum, mean that it is not favorable for the best growth of the grapes. And that's because plentiful water, of course, more shoot growth, more competition, and severe water stress, closed stomata, and less ripening as well. Too much water availability late in the ripening period can cause a dilution of the grapes and a dilution of the sugars. And this can even cause what I've got here, so grape splitting. So you could see an overswelling of the grape, a largening of the grape, and then potentially grape splitting. And grape splitting could lead to, at the bottom there, rots, different forms of rot. And that's what we tend to have, I think, in this picture just here. Splitting, that is. Okay, so what about the connection between water and soil warmth? So here we have a couple of diagrams. So as well as the direct influence, which is what we've been talking about up to this point, the direct influence of water availability on the vine, water also has, of course, an impact on the terroir, on the environment around the vine. So first of all, damp soils, soils that have some moisture content to them, for example, things like clay. These are often cold, especially early in the growing season, so around springtime, and this can, because it's colder and reducing the environment's temperature and heat, this can delay bud burst, and in turn, that can shorten the growing season, meaning it's potentially difficult to ripen those grapes. And on the opposite side, which we've got here on the right-hand side, warm soils, by contrast, can actually promote bud burst, of course, and that can encourage really good root growth as well. And that means that there is more ability to the vine to take up more water, with that root network being developed, and nutrients. But of course, earlier bud bursts, certainly in cooler continental climates, would mean that there is the risk of frost, because you run the risk of a longer time through bud bursts or an earlier part of the year, which frost could be damaging, of course. Okay. Next up, rather extreme, but water is in one form can be hail. And hail are anything from little tiny pea-sized bits of ice to what you see in this picture, and even beyond in some cases, certainly in Argentina. And depending on when hailstorms will fall, usually in summer, but they can be throughout the year, hailstorms will damage everything it hits. In some way, shape or form. So you will find that in vineyards, hail will cause major destruction to all the green parts of the vine. Now, normally things like trunks and cordons, the woody parts, are quite solid and they're quite protected. However, the green parts are much more flexible, remember, and they will, of course, be damaged. Leaves will get shredded, flowers will get destroyed, grapes will get hit and split, tendrils will get broken, and so on. So this will lead to, often if it's quite intensive, a dramatic reduction in the yields. And that could also reduce the quality of any remaining fruit left. Often it's a nightmare for a grape grower because, of course, they've lost a huge amount, and anything left has to be really, really severely worked through. It must be heavily selected. Okay, so that's hail. Then we have the effects of water during the floraison, or flowering and fruit set. Rainfall at pollination or fertilization and fruit set can negatively affect these important stages of the vine growth cycle. So this is something that actually has been mentioned before on the vine growth sections of viticulture that I've done, if you want to have a look at that in greater detail. Results in uneven ripening and lower yields. And there are examples here. So you've got coulure. So you have unsuccessful flowers that eventually will fall off, and they normally affect quite a lot of the vine. It's linked to the carbohydrate supplies. And then millerandange on this right-hand side, where the pollination happens, but it is unsuccessful. And you get these small little green berries which have no pips or seeds in the middle of them. They can be used for the wine, but of course they are exceedingly acidic and they're often discarded. So that is millerandange. Please do look at the videos on vine shoot. On the growth cycle of the vine for further information. So what about water and humidity? So rain often creates quite a humid environment. Of course, when it rains, there is water in the air and the relative humidity increases. And this humidity will increase within the vine canopy as well. And that can, of course, lead to the overpropagation of fungal diseases such as powdery mildew that we see in this picture, and other fungal diseases as well, such as botrytis. And then what about water in terms of the proximity of vineyards to large bodies of water? How does this have an impact on the growing environment? Well, the presence of a large body of water can moderate both diurnal and seasonal temperatures. So it can have some effect in reducing the extreme continentality, but also the diurnal difference in those areas. So that is a large body of water. Next up is ocean currents. Now, ocean currents have quite a large part to play. You see it's identified at the bottom of the diagram just there. These can also either increase or decrease the average temperature in the growing season of nearby wine regions. Now, this is something which has been talked about quite a bit with things like other sections I have done on sunlight and vine growth cycle as well. The ocean currents could be a cooling effect, such as the California cool current. You could have the Benguela and also the Humboldt, which both originate from Antarctica and affect respectively South Africa and Chile. But with Western Europe, where I am situated, we have quite a warming current that really does bring wet and warm weather, and that's the Gulf Stream, which originates from the Gulf of Mexico and then works its way across the Atlantic, bringing that warmer and wetter weather. So that is another way where it will bring up the temperature. That's hence why Bordeaux, for instance, has an average warmer growth season than, say, Oregon and the Willamette Valley on the same latitude. They both share the 45-degree north latitude. But the average temperature with Bordeaux during the growth season is about 17.7 degrees Celsius. And in the Willamette Valley, it's below 16 degrees Celsius. And that's really to do with the effect of the cooling effect of the Pacific on the Willamette Valley, and then the warming effect of the Gulf Stream on Bordeaux, for example. Then you've got lakes or rivers, and the diagram here has a little lake in the middle with a river running into it and out of it. A lake or river can encourage breezes that may reduce the likelihood of frost, so it will have those cooling effects, so that's possible. And then finally, our last slide here is proximity to water can increase. Of course, if you're near lakes, near a multitude of rivers, they can increase the humidity within the vineyards near there, which can negatively increase fungal disease. However, there are many famous wines produced from fungal disease like botrytis, noble rot. You have Sauternes and Barsac, which is situated on where the river Ciron runs into the Garonne. And really that accumulation of humidity due to those rivers increases the percentage of noble rot. The same with Tokai, with the Tisva and the Bodrog rivers, which run into each other near the Tokai area. And there are many others, such as lakes around Austria, on the Austria-Hungarian border, the Neudesely Lake, but also things like the Mosel as well, and the Rhine, and so on. So increasing humidity and potential for fungal diseases, both negative and positive. Okay, so that brings me to the conclusion of part 1 on the growing environment around water for the WSET Wine Production D1 for the Level 4. I hope you have enjoyed this. I hope it's given you some good confidence for your studies and get you sort of stuck into it. Once again, this part is available as free content, but every other video in this section, which is parts 2, 3 and 4, are only available on my e-learning portal. That's www.winewithjimmy.com. If, as always, you have any comments, questions or concerns, you can do 3 things. You can get in touch with us via the website directly, winewithjimmy.com, the social media that you see at the bottom of every slide, or, because this is available on YouTube, you can comment in the comments section below. Please make sure that you press the subscribe button down there as well, because we do lots of videos for wine education, crossing lots of syllabuses, and they are increasing by 2, being launched on YouTube every week, and lots more on our e-learning portal. If you do find yourself in old London town in the United Kingdom, come and see me for a class, a glass or a bottle. I've been Jimmy Smith. Thank you so much.